Well, there's no doubt at all that it's a big, big day in Pakistan. The former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is returning home with a call to defend the country against forces that are out to discredit his campaign and disrupt the free elections. It's his desperate final bid to galvanize his party, which is facing a tough contest with the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf of Imran Khan. Now, bang in the middle of this tussle also comes an explosive new book by the former wife of Imran Khan. Reham Khan has detailed her 10-month marriage with the former cricketer and mentions that the politician now has 5 illegitimate children, some of whom are in India. Joining me this evening right now to talk about the book, Imran's politics and, of course, Nawaz Sharif's return, we have with us Reham Khan herself. Reham, good evening. First of all, congratulations that the book is out. We did speak earlier about, the contents that had been leaked online, but it's made big news in India. It is on the front page of most of the newspapers. And I think everyone seems to be concentrating on that detail regarding the 5 illegitimate children that you say Imran Khan actually admitted to having. Has it created the sort of buzz that you were expecting it to, given the timing also of its release?
Thank you, Aisha. Yes, it's made a lot of, taken a lot of media space in India. I have had a huge response in the US of all places with we're looking at how people are buying, and in Europe. Mysteriously so, in Pakistan, media channels have been told very clearly not to give the book any coverage. So none of the news bulletins ran it. There was an interview run by a channel, and I have been told by someone who works at the channel that all advertisement has been pulled off the channel today for as a punishment for running an interview with me about the book. So this is the sort of fascism we are putting up with, and of course, as you mentioned, with the former Prime Minister returning with his daughter today, we're seeing the same kind of sort of, we're celebrating our 70-year-old democratic traditions in Pakistan today in Lahore with the clampdown, which I say in the book as well that I'm a child of the Zia years, but I've never seen this dictatorial approach and this blatant fascism ever before. It would be funny if it was not so sad. So in Pakistan, they're pretending that the book has not arrived, but also I do know that at this point in time, this is probably the only uniting time for Pakistan and India, because everyone is reading from the same book.
Right, and of course, as you were mentioning, the entire, let's say, news wheel has been overtaken by the fact that the PMLN's Supremo and his daughter are on their way back. I will press you further on a couple of questions as far as the election goes in a bit, but just I don't want to dwell too much on these allegations that you've made and the ones that have created a storm here in India. But the mention of the fact that these children might be of, Indian mothers, and the fact that they told Imran Khan that they were happy about it. I want to understand what your reaction was at that point, being married to somebody who's very openly admitting to the fact that he has illegitimate children and children that he hasn't recognized, knowing full well that that could jeopardize his political career in Pakistan.
I think my reaction was not so much, I never really treated him or felt that he was, I didn't marry him because he was a politician. Had I known that he was, this sort of a politician, I would never have married him. My reaction was more on a personal level, because for me, and my family, our life revolves around our children, and also we take the responsibility of parenting very seriously. We see that as a privilege. And so I was a bit shocked at the trivializing of it. It's not so much the fact that he has children and that they're out of wedlock. It's the fact that it was that it's treated very flippantly. And so I was, as I say in the book as well, I didn't really want to know anymore. And the fact that he didn't want to know anything about these children, Tyrion, he talks very fondly about, and I say in the book as well that he says that she's a spitting image of his mother. But these children, I don't know, I suppose it's because they were, a couple of them, as he told me, were children of married women, and that the women had, according to him, withheld the information from their husbands. So what I understood from the conversation was that he's still in touch with the mothers, or had been at some point in time, but not with the children. But I never really revisited the issue because it was just, the way it was told to me was just so, I think I just hoped that it was a lie, basically, and that he was just bragging rather than it being actually possible.
Okay, and just to clarify this, you are suggesting then, or am I right in assuming that these children don't know the fact that Imran Khan is their father?
I have no idea about that. I couldn't really comment. I have actually repeated the incident, the interaction word for word, what he said and what I said. So he did know, as I've said, that he did know the ages of them, and he told me the age of the eldest, and that was a bit shocking because that means that was quite a while ago, but so much older than Tyrion. But I didn't really want to know anymore, and I never really sort of discussed it with him again. He said that he had told Jemima also, so it isn't only I wasn't the only privileged one to get this information.
All right. Just today, the fact that we've been hearing of this news of how the Pakistan People's Party's Bilawal Bhutto Zardari wasn't allowed to take off from Lahore. Lahore, of course, the center of all attention in South Asia, if I will. But Imran Khan has been allowed to take off from the very same airport. We're also hearing all kinds of suggestions about the fact that he has the backing of the army in a way that nobody really understands. Do you think that he will be the next Prime Minister of Pakistan? Does that look like a reality to you today?
I think the Bilawal Bhutto has gone as far as call him the president-select, and I don't think that he is at all wrong in that labeling. It has been made very clear. If you look at the media, I mean, it's very, very clear where the support is coming from and who the support is going to. I really am a diehard optimist, and I can tell you during the intro, Aisha, I heard you say that Nawaz Sharif is going to make a last-ditch attempt at galvanizing his party and his support against, the growing powerful opposition of PTI. That's not the reality in Pakistan, with due respect. Nawaz Sharif doesn't have to galvanize support. He doesn't really even need to go back to galvanize support. He has a lot of support. People are not blind. I think the fact is that this blatant fascism and this blatant high-handedness has not gone amiss, and it's not only the intellectuals and the Twitterati who are noticing it. It's normal folk. It's people who work in normal jobs, and I'm speaking to home staff, and women are telling me this. Women who've never been to school can see this blatant favoring of Imran. And at the same time, Imran has actually seen a decline in popularity because, you see, he's not seen as strong and in that hero role anymore, whereas Nawaz Sharif is seen as courage, as I've said, is a very admirable thing. Maryam Nawaz as well, the fact that I think this is the first time in history that somebody is actually defying the establishment, and they're going back in this way. And a lot of critics of PMLN and people who have no love lost for either Maryam Nawaz Sharif or Nawaz Sharif and are from other parties. I'm looking at Twitter, and we are all sort of, quite impressed by this courage when you know that this is, that there is no deal in the making, and that there is a lot of high-handedness, visibility, and we expect a very unfair treatment. For example, at Abu Dhabi airport, we've traveled via the same airline, and we have never seen a flight being delayed. Right. A lot of journalists have traveled with the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, and his daughter, and the first-class lounge has been sealed. Now, my memory goes back immediately to the time I traveled as a journalist with the Tahirul Qadri back in 2014, and it was a big party in the first-class lounge, and there was none of this none of these tensions or these security concerns on Abu Dhabi airport, and that is what everybody is looking at. So it's looking very tilted towards Imran, but I think that this is going to go against him because a lot of people. I mean, this is not really a win. It's almost like. It's almost like, well, it is like dictatorship where you're picking someone and putting them in place, and that's not. I don't know whether that would be even. Is that win going to be give anyone's ego any satisfaction, because it's clearly not based on merit.
Right, Reham. I take that point from you. The fact that you're saying that he's already galvanized a lot of support. He is a very popular man in Pakistan, especially in Punjab, Nawaz Sharif. And I wonder then the reaction we've seen from Pakistan in the last couple of days. The fact that the state media, PTV, has been told that it's not going to interview anyone who is convicted. The fact that the internet and telephone lines are clamped down on in Pakistan, the fact that a lot of people are saying that there's already a gag on the media on how they're expected to report on the Pakistani elections. Does that just strengthen the narrative that the PMLN is actually a force to contend with and is being deliberately squeezed, as Nawaz Sharif has suggested repeatedly in the last couple of months?
Absolutely. I mean, if anything, if I was to believe in some sort of conspiracy theory, I think that the fact that Nawaz Sharif has become such a big hero and Maryam Nawaz Sharif has been launched, and I think she's been launched by her opponents. I think my ex has a lot to do with the fact that people really see this. And also you have to remember that the paradox is quite interesting, that here is a man and people behind him who are mainstreaming extremism. They're talking about alienating, they're talking about hate politics, they're talking about divisive politics. And then here's a woman who's very much fits into the modern face of Pakistan 2018, where a woman is out on the streets galvanizing support first for her father, then for her mother. She's never been in office, and they see that as courage. So that's a true face of Pakistan. You see, we live in a Pakistan where actually the media is misportraying us. We don't want extremists mainstreamed. Pakistanis, by and large, the 220 million population, and I see these people on a daily basis. I have a very grassroots connection with them. And I hear people, even from parties like PMLQ, active members of PMLQ, saying, we love the fact that, she is quite impressive. So you see, I see and I hear those things, and I get, obviously I will get blamed for sort of, supporting her maybe, but this is a fact. People like the fact that she's a very modern woman. She is defiant. People admire that. People also like the fact that she's actually never been in office. And so what are they talking about? What is she? What is the crime that she's committed? People are not blind anymore. And it's sad, actually, that it's a tragic fall for the hero or the celebrity that Imran was for 40 years in our life. And people are seeing through all of this. So I think, yes, the clampdown on not only state media, but even on social media. People are being very careful about how they tweet. And people have been, the media has been told clearly not to report. So I don't understand. They did not have those guidelines for Ehsanullah Ehsan when he was somebody who was admitted to being part of terror plots, and he was interviewed on TV. There was not a problem with that. So obviously, if you have no problem with glorifying militants, but you have a problem with a former prime minister who's coming back, and it's at least a story, but there has been a blackout. So how do you rationalize that? Of course, it gives a lot of credibility and builds up the narrative that Nawaz Sharif has been putting forward. And it's just extra brownie points for Nawaz Sharif and Maryam Nawaz.
Right. The topic of Maryam Nawaz brings me back to a very important subject in your own book, and that is about the role of women. You start off with this sort of visceral image that I suppose many women in South Asia can connect with, of your former husband walking into a room and punching you in the chest. Why did you choose to start off with an image such as that, or the depiction of an image such as that? And of course, how exactly have you approached the question of women in abusive marriages in South Asia and their choice of keeping quiet, until, of course, that was the tipping point for you?
Well, you see, I've said in the book as well, and a lot of, I'm very heartened by quite a lot of comments from people I don't know personally, but men, and who perhaps didn't like me very much, and they have read, but as long as they're sort of fair and unbiased men, and they've read it, and it has had an impact on them, because they, as children, as young boys, have perhaps seen their mothers or maybe seen a sister go through this, and it's really had an impact on them. And what they've been saying to me actually is the fact that we see that it was you endured that for a very long time. And when I respond with the fact that I think I just didn't have the courage, and I say that in the book as well, that I did not have the courage, and that's why it's not heroic of me to put up with it, and for anyone to put up with violence of any kind in different formats. You see, I talk about the punch because it's a very physical attack, but actually the things that people say to you and how they affect your confidence level, that's what happens in control situations. When you think that you're actually not good enough because the perpetrator is telling you that you're not good enough, and where will you go? And so I've talked about it because it is a very strong image, but it was also the point where I actually picked up the phone. A lot of people have said to me that if it was that bad, why didn't you leave for 12 years? And I think I speak for a lot of women that you do not have the courage, and it's because you think that society will disapprove. Hell yes, society does disapprove when you take a stand. People do also say odd, absurd stuff about, well, if it was that bad, why did you have 3 children? This is the sort of thing that we hear in India, Pakistan all the time. But actually domestic violence and choosing to stay in domestic violence, I say choosing because it is a mindset, is something which is still a reality. It's a reality for 97% of all crime or domestic violence is in the US is committed by intimate partners, fathers, brothers, husbands, or boyfriends. And so that is a reality for women across the world, more so in India, Pakistan, because we don't even have laws that will support us. Right. For example, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, we still don't have a women protection bill where you cannot actually report to the police and there will be nothing. At least in my case, there was the law, but I was just choosing not to go there because I was living in fear about what my family would say, where I would go, and would this perpetrator then come back? And he has been. As you can clearly see, this is now 26 years. My son is going to be 25 in October. I've lived with this abusive relationship, first physically for 12 and a half years, and since I've left that divorce, since I filed for the divorce, I have actually been the victim of abuse in a remote controlled fashion. And through the book, you see that even Imran joins hands with my first husband. So it is still abuse. I mean, I still cannot tell people where I live. I'm constantly changing addresses with 2 grown-up children and 1 under 15-year-old. I'm constantly under attack. And I'm Reham Khan. So you would expect that I would have some sort of privileges. Imagine just a normal woman who doesn't have a high profile or contacts. Where would she go? And this is the reality for women living in London. I have women from Bangladeshi, Indian, Sri Lankan, Pakistani origin, even white women working for civil rights, and they have abusive relationships as we speak. Just before I came onto the show, I was speaking to someone who wants to speak on my launch event for my book, and I know her personal situation, right. And she's a women's rights activist. So these are the realities and I feel quite guilty that I didn't write about it before, maybe say 10 years ago, but I think that maybe it was meant to be that I have a better platform now, and I do feel very strongly some of the threats that I've been getting are the fact that, your first husband is going to take you to court. And I said, well, you know what? This is something that I take on as a crusade. And I really want to be the voice and tell women and tell the world also that this has to stop. I'm this person who has been perpetrating violence, not only in a personal capacity, but is actually working for the NHS. How is that even safe? That's something that even employers must take into consideration. And this is the same with Imran as well. I mean, if you are somebody who behaves like this in a personal capacity, but you're actually making decisions for 220 million or potentially making decisions for 220 million people as well as for the region, surely this is something that should be discussed and should be out in the open.
And bringing things out in the open, you also sort of talk about the relationship between you and your mother and the sort of silence that sometimes accompanies even relationships between women about menstruation, about sexual relationships, and of course safe sex. I mean, those are topics that I suppose continue to be taboo in Pakistan. Why did you feel that it was necessary to talk about these things in a book which really is quite tell-all? It's about your journey from childhood till date. Why did you mention that particular aspect of your relationship with your mother?
Because I described my mother as the biggest influence in my life. And I think that towards the end, when she lost the ability to speak as much as, she was such an articulate speaker, that I think my biggest win is the fact that my mother came round to the fact that, that you should not be contained in life. And she was far more intelligent, far more confident. I think I'm 0.1% of her abilities, but she didn't live her life to the fullest. And she had a husband different to my husband's. She had a husband who would have supported her. She had brothers who would have supported her. She came from a very privileged background. She could have done all of that, but the fear of society dictated everything. And towards the end of her life, the fact that when post-divorce with Imran, she accepted and she accepted my courage also and my non-conformist attitude, I think is a big win for me. Well, I'll tell you something quite interesting. I have two girls, and both of them, of course, are British-born girls. They've been educated in the system here. They're my daughters, so you'd expect them to be, I suppose, feministic. But when we came to these childhood stories, they were like, they're still so desi, and they were like, oh my God, you can't say that. You can't talk about these things. And so they were like, they had a whole sort of, because still in my culture, and I'm I'm the sort of parent, you can come and talk to me about anything. But I think that, and my children are still sort of dictated by that society where they were like, Mom, you can't say that. You can't talk about this. And they were, and I was shocked at that. So it means that even my children, even my girls are like, they haven't read the book, but I read that specific bit out to them and they were like, Mom, you can't say that. And I said, that's exactly why I want to say that, because I talk in the book about the fact that you're getting your girls married off at 15, 16, 17. And my mom being so educated, a mathematician and, an intellectual, and she didn't appreciate me talking to my friends who were married off because she didn't want them to share intimate details, I suppose. And that's so wrong because I was married a year later. And so why do you not talk to your children about contraceptive or menstruation? These are not taboo subjects.
Right.
These are part of our life. And I think that these attitudes still exist in India, but in Pakistan, it's like I'm branded a scarlet woman for talking about these things. But that's exactly why I have been brutally honest. And I think it's important to talk about it. And we have to break these taboos because A, they're perfectly natural. And B, we must talk to our children. We must talk to our societies. Maybe we could have had better men if we had been more receptive as women, as mothers. And I know that because the proof is in the pudding. I have a son who is completely unfazed by all of these things. And so, you can, he knows about everything, and he takes things as everything is natural. He doesn't see women as a commodity. He doesn't see a woman as a sex object.
Right.
He's completely, and so that's the sort of thing that we need to encourage in society. So we make better men, but it will only be if women have to be strong first also, and we have to stand up for other women as well. I think some of the deepest criticisms have actually come from women on Twitter, and I'm reading about how they are far more critical than the men.
Yes, that was something that I want to ask you. I'm running out of time. So last question, Reham, to you. Are you surprised by the backlash that you've gotten from your own gender, especially women who are saying that these seem to be claims that you're making, especially when it comes to Imran Khan, as somebody, who has sour grapes, the marriage didn't work out, and you could have talked about it earlier. What do you want to say to those people?
You see, I have written about women and how, just because somebody is your gender, Aisha, does not mean that they can always be right. So, for example, if two women are contesting, or say one woman and one man is contesting for the prime position, just because one of them is a woman, I would not necessarily vote for her. I would vote for the better person. So I think these things have to change. And yes, some of the criticism has come from my own gender, but equally, these are women who are already, some of the women who are criticizing, I have evidence on them also. And I've chosen to withhold that because they're irrelevant to the bigger story. They're not in a position where they can actually influence policy. But so I know that they have their own problems, and I'm sympathetic to that. I understand why a woman is critical or why a woman is more, shall we say, bitter. And that's because of the emotional state that they might be in. And I understand that exploitation, particularly sexual favors, even in today's society, it suits the man, it doesn't suit the women. And so a lot of people do get affected. So I do have empathy, shall I say. I can actually be a little bit more forgiving towards them. But I do think that the backlash that I have received, I was expecting a lot more than that. I've not done it so that people fall in love with me. I've done it because it had to be done. So I don't really care what people think about me. Even if people hate me now, 5 years down the line, 20 years down the line, they will realize that what I was saying was right and it needed to be said, because there comes a time where you have to put it just as it is, and you have to do it at the cost of sort of, people assassinating my character or my daughters. We are prepared for that. I've taken a very conscious decision. So I think that now that I've done it, other people will also, I hope, gain strength from it. And a lot of people are. A lot of young girls are emailing me, and they were sort of quietly cheering me and say, "Don't get bullied. We're hearing that you're getting bullied. Please do go ahead with it, because we look up to you."